Well, thank you very much, Steve. Happy greetings, everyone. Always a pleasure to be with you on a Friday night go-to meeting. Yes, if you're looking for a title, I titled it, although you won't really understand the title until we're almost all the way through, but not quite. Hems and corners, like hems, the hem of a garment, and corner, the corner of something. So hems and garments. During the 3.5 year ministry of Jesus, perhaps the most prominent aspect of it, or certainly one of the most prominent aspects, was healing. He seemed to be healing everybody in sight. Not quite, little exaggeration. But he was healing men and women. He healed young and old. Sometimes he healed individual, sometimes he healed more than once, one at a time, a crowd. But that's what he did. Tonight, we're going to look at one particular healing, which was unique. To me, it was the most inspirational healing of them all when you really look at it. But first, I would like to read about 3 or 4 of his normal healings. That is, if you could call healing normal. It certainly involved a lot of power and energy by the Son of God. So let's just look at 3 or 4 of them, and we will see the contrast between these and the unique one. Matthew chapter 8. We'll start there, right after the Sermon on the Mount. Verse 1. When he came down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you will, you have the power to cleanse me. Then Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be cleansed. And immediately he was cleansed from his leprosy. Now you'll notice the leper recognized him, at least to some degree, his power. And Jesus healed him. Now let's go to the next one. Verse 5, just dropping down a couple of verses. Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, beseeching him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying in the house paralyzed and grievously tormented. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. And of course, the remarkable statement by the centurion. In essence, he said, don't bother, Lord. You don't have to. You have authority. I'm a man under authority. I tell one, come, goes, he comes, he goes. Just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. And all we have to do is drop down to verse 13. Then Jesus said to the centurion, Go, and as you have believed, so be it done to you. And his servant was healed in that hour. Look at the next verse. And after coming into Peter's house, Jesus saw Peter's mother-in-law lying sick with fever. He touched her hand. Didn't say anything. He just touched her hand, and she was healed. Amazing on some of these. And drop down now to verse, I believe it's verse 16. Yes, verse 16. Now when evening had come, they brought to him many possessed with demons, and he cast out the spirits by his word and healed all who were sick. Now, I don't know how many all were, but I'm willing to bet you, as my wife used to say, a whole bunch. He healed a lot of people. So now let's look at one more healing before we zero in on our study tonight. And this one, of course, is in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John and John 9 and verse 1. John 9 and verse 1. Now, as Jesus was passing by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered and said, neither did this man sin, nor his parents. Rather, this blindness came so that the works of God might be manifested. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is still day. When the night comes, no one is able to work. After saying these things, verse 6, he spat on the ground, made clay of the spittle, applied the clay to the eyes of the blind man, and he said to him, go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. Then he sent and washed and came home seeing, came from there seeing. Quite a remarkable healing. It reminds you, to some degree, of Naaman, the leper, who came to the prophet Elisha, came before his door. And Elisha said to him through his servant, Elisha didn't even speak to him. He just told his servant to say, go wash in the river Jordan 7 times, and you will be healed of your leprosy. Naaman didn't exactly like that. This is ridiculous, he thought. But he was persuaded. He went to the Jordan, dipped in it 7 times, and he was healed. Now, you can read about that in 2 Kings chapter 5. Okay. But now we're going to look at an incredible healing. We have 2 accounts of it, but this healing was truly remarkable because of this. In all the other healings, Jesus took an active role. He said something. Whether he said, be healed, whether he said, be unto you according to your faith, whether he touched someone's hand, touched someone's body, he did something to produce that healing. But this healing that we're going to look at, Jesus said nothing, he did nothing, and he never took credit for it. An incredible healing, truly inspirational because it has implications for us today. I'm talking about the woman with the flow of blood for 12 years, what she suffered. So we have 2 accounts of it. The first one we'll look at is in Luke. The other one is in Matthew. Now what we're going to do is we're going to read them. And I want you to read them very carefully. And then we'll comment and dissect it. But the first one is in Luke. And in particular, verse 43. In verse 43, we read, and a woman who had been afflicted with a flow of blood for 12 years and had spent her whole living on physicians, but could not be cured by anyone, all to no avail. Well, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately the flow of blood stopped. And Jesus said, who touched me? And as everybody began to deny it, Peter and those with him said, Master, the multitudes are thronging and pressing you, and you ask, who touched me? And Jesus said, though, someone touched me, because I know that power went out from me. Then the woman, seeing that her act was not concealed, came trembling and falling down in front of him before all the people. This was some spectacle. She declared for what cause she had touched and how she had immediately been healed. And he said to her, be of good courage, daughter, your faith has healed you. Nothing else. Your faith has healed you. Well, now let's look at the other account here in Matthew. Now,
Matthew
Matthew is a
9.
smaller one, but it adds a piece of knowledge that Luke doesn't. Critical. Matthew 9, and in this case, verse 19. Then Jesus and his disciples arose and followed him. And behold, a woman who had been afflicted with a flow of blood for 12 years, after coming behind him, touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, if only I shall touch his garment, I shall be healed. But Jesus turned, and seeing the woman, he said to her, be of good courage, daughter, your faith has made you whole. And from that hour, the woman was healed. Again, Jesus had almost nothing to do with the healing, except, of course, it was through his power. All healings were produced through the power of Jesus, but he played no active role at all. And that's important. Now, what do we take away from this, first of all? What did he tell her? He told her, your faith has made you whole, has healed you. Well, what is faith? Now, we really know what faith is, but oblige me, follow me, and let's take it step by step. What is faith? Because Jesus said, that's what healed you, O daughter of Israel. Well, look at what Paul said in the book of Hebrews. Now, we've been there many times, but let's go there again. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 1. Now, this definition of sin is in a way almost a little obtuse. It is real. It is faithful. It is good. It is accurate. But what does it say? 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. In other words, when you have faith, there's something you need, something you want, something that's important. You don't have it yet, but you know you're going to get it. It's going to come to you, just not yet. That's faith. Well, I found that I needed something a little more direct for me. So I came up with this. My definition is strong belief that leads to action. And it's kind of nice to know that the Apostle James backed me up. It's always nice to know when an apostle says you're right. So let's turn to see what James said right after the book of Acts. James chapter 2. And we'll pick it up there in verse 18, 19. And we will see what he says. James chapter 2. Beginning in verse 17. In the same way also, faith, if it does not have works, is dead by itself, because it won't lead to anything happening. But someone's going to say, you have faith, I have works. My answer is, you prove your faith by your works, I will prove my faith by my works. And that's true. In fact, we have two scriptures, Romans 1:17 and Habakkuk 2:4. Let's look at the one in Romans, and we won't do much more because of time's sake. But clearly, we're talking about faith, and Paul said, actually he was quoting Habakkuk here. Romans chapter 1 and 17, verse 17. For therein the righteousness of God is revealed from faith unto faith, according as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Of course, Martin Luther, the author of the Protestant Reformation, the beginning of Lutheranism, he didn't like works, so he just put it there alone. Well, that was Martin Luther. Now here, Paul was quoting Habakkuk. Now, for those of you who have the faithful version, You'll find that on page 687. But we're not going to bother with it. So her faith led her to touch the border or the corner or the hem of Jesus' garment. She accessed his power. Now, how did she do that? What made her think that touching a particular part of his garment would unleash the power to heal her? Well, I remember way back when, a long time ago, when I was age 6 or 7, we were living in New York at the time, and I was given by my dad an electric train set. Oh, I was so happy with that train set. We had 2 rectangular pieces of wood, flat, the track running all around it. And there was my electric train, my locomotive, a few cars, a caboose, and of course, some of the accoutrements of the station and things like that, light signal. Well, how do you run it? Now, I knew nothing, or at least next to nothing, about AC DC current. But I was smart enough to know that if I took the electric cord, at the head of it, those 2 prongs, and if I would plug it into the wall socket, voila, electrical power came out. Well, this woman did the same thing. Now, she accessed the power of God by touching the hem of his garment. And she knew it. But how did she know it? And why should that be? It's amazing. Well, it had to do with the garment. Look what Jesus said about the garment in Matthew 23. In Matthew 23, he's excoriating the Pharisees. But look what he says in verse 5 of Matthew 23. They do all their works to be seen by men. They make broad their phylacteries. Now, the phylactery was a garment. All Jews of that time who wanted to truly serve God had a 4-cornered garment, and attached to that garment were tassels, woven fabric. Now, Jesus wore them. Now, but these Pharisees, they wore huge ones. Boy, they were really going to show how pious they were. And why did they do that? Numbers chapter 15. That'll tell us a lot. Here's the authority for it. Numbers chapter 15. Numbers 15, and we'll see it in verse 37. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and command them that they make fringes in the borders of their garments. Okay? Remember the title of this thing? Hems, corners, borders. All the same. Throughout their generations, that they may put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. So intertwined in these twisted knots of fabric was a thread of blue. Blue because blue was a royal color. This is royalty. So it was a ribbon of blue. And it shall be to you for a fringe, that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, so that you do not seek after your own heart and your own eyes, which you yourself wantingly go after. Jesus was well aware of their nature. He'd seen the golden calf and so forth, so he knew what was going to happen, but he did this so it will remind you to keep the commandments of God. Verse 40, that you may remember to do all my commandments and be holy to your God. Holy. That is important. But before we comment on this, let's see the last verse here. Now, when God says something, All he has to do is say it once. And if he says it twice, well, we better sit up and take notice. But if he says it twice in the same verse, we really better sit up and take notice. Verse 41, I am the Lord your God. That is, I am Adonai, Elohecha, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. You do this. It was important to God. He meant business. But he says that through all this, you're to be holy. Well, holy, and we also have holy and sanctify. They both have the meaning of to set apart. So let's look at the Sabbath just a few minutes and see how that set apart Israel. Let's go to Genesis. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. And we'll pick it up in verse 2. And by the beginning of the Sabbath day, God finished his work which he had made. And he rested on the Sabbath day, meaning he ceased from his labor, from all his work which he had made. And he blessed the seventh day, sanctified it, setting it apart, because on it he ceased from all his work which God had created and made. All right. God is signing off on creation. If you read this in the Hebrew, you're going to find out that you have his closing remarks in 3 sentences, that number 3, of 7 words each. It's 21 words. This he signed off on it. Perfect. Tov ma'od. Excellent work. But this keeping the Sabbath was to be a sign or a marker that Israel was holy, set apart to him. Look at Exodus chapter 31. Exodus chapter 31. And we'll take it beginning in verse 13. Exodus 31. My fingers will work here for me. Sometimes they don't, but here we go. 13. Speak also unto the children of Israel, saying, Truly ye shall keep my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, to know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you, yes, who sets you apart. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore. It's holy to you to be set apart. Everyone that defiles it shall surely be put to death. And he goes on and explains further. Okay. So the people are to keep the Sabbath holy. But you see, God is holy and the people are holy. And that's in Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 19, a truly remarkable chapter in this book. You find a lot of sacrifices and rituals, but in chapter 19, you don't find too much of rituals. So chapter 19, verse 2, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, set apart, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. All right. People are holy, sanctified. You keep the Sabbath, you go his laws and commandments, it sets you apart. No other nation kept God's laws and commandments. And then he says, I am holy. Well, how is God holy? How is he set apart? He is God of gods. I am the only true God. You can read in Isaiah chapters 45, 46, 47, 48 when he says, I alone am God. I don't know of any other God. There are no other gods before me. He's sanctified. He's set apart. He is complete control. So the borders, let's go back to Numbers. Let's go back to Numbers. And look at, well, we're going to compare. I'm sorry, we left Leviticus 19 too soon. Let's go back to Leviticus 19. for one verse. Leviticus 19 and verse 37. Leviticus 19, verse 37. I just left before I was completely through. Verse 37. And you shall observe all my statutes and all my judgments and do them. I am Yahweh. Now compare that with what we have in Numbers. Numbers 15 and verse 40. Numbers 15 and verse 40. That you remember and do all my commandments and be holy to your God. Okay. Well, now what we have to do is look at some details. She touched the hem of Jesus' garment. Now, the Hebrew equivalent of the word for garment there is kanaf, K-A-N-A-F. The plural of it is kanafim, which also means, among other things, wings. Wings. Oh, very important. The corners of garments have been compared to birds' wings. So let's now look at a few scriptures. Let's look at the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms. And we'll look at chapter 17 and verse 8. The book of Psalms. First one will be 17 and verse 8. And we're going to talk about wings here. 17 and verse 8. Keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me under the shadow of your wings. Kanafim, kanafayim. The root letters there of wings. Wings of God are very important. Very important. Now the next psalm. Psalm 91. Psalm 91 and verse 4. And we find essentially the same thing. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings, kanafim, you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. So we're taking refuge under his wings. And then comes almost the mind-blowing one. Malachi 4. Malachi chapter 4 and verse 2. But unto you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness, now this of course is not S-O-N, it is S-U-N, but Jesus is compared to the sun, the brightness of the sun, shall arise, and healing will be in his wings. Now remember, the tassel that Jesus that she wanted to touch, kanafim, wings, the healing wings. She knew, she understood as being part of his covenant. Because God's a covenantal God. He makes covenants, he makes promises, he keeps them. And that tassel was the door. It was the lock to the power of God for healing. She knew it. She understood it. All those who were close to God at all those who had any understanding knew she recognized Jesus as the Messiah. She recognized him as the one sent by God. And that's why she said, let's go back to Matthew 9. Let's go back to Matthew 9. And we started it in verse 19. So let's go back. Okay. Behold, in verse 20, the woman who had been afflicted with a flow of blood for 12 years came behind him. For she said, if only I shall touch his garment, I shall be healed. Touching his garment was just like me, a silly 7-year-old boy plugging the electric cord into the wall socket. Automatic. The power came out. The same thing is true with Jesus. He didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to do anything. As he said, oh, daughter, your faith did this. Your belief was so strong that it led you to fight, to come, to get to me and touch it. That's what healed her. The only healing in all of the New Testament where a woman, by strong belief, said, if only I can touch the garment. That's the key. She knew it. And she was rewarded. Well, now, what we need to do, in addition to that, is look at 3 Hebrew words. The first word is tzitzit. I know Steve and I were talking about this before I started. And let me give you the spelling of it. The sound is different from the spelling. The spelling of it is T-Z-I-T-Z-I-T. But the Z has the pronunciation of ts. It's like T-S, ts. And so it is sounded out as tzitzit. Now, the tzitzit is the word for the tassel or the fringe. That's the garment, the fringe. Then we have 2 other, and these, by the way, all 3 of these Hebrew words, they're related. Excuse me. They are related. We have natsah, N-A-T-Z-A-H, natsah. And that word is to fly. Remember wings, healing wings? Yeah, fly. The third word is hitzah. We have natsah, we have hitzah. You can hear the similarity. You see the root letters. They're very similar. Now, hitzah means to struggle, to really try hard, to give it all you have. You got to work at it. Because a bird flies. You know, it flaps its wings. That takes work. You got to flap your wings to fly. That's right. So she tried with hitzah to natsah. Only she wasn't literally flying, but it gave her that strength to somehow come in among all those people and get to the point where she said, if only I can touch the border, the hem of that garment. Therein lies, because it says healing on it. Kanaf, kanafim, wings, healing wings. See, she knew it. She understood it. I don't know how many people on that day really did. Very few, I would imagine. But she did. And she gave it everything she had. As I say, the most remarkable healing for me, anyway, as I read all of Jesus' healings. Oh, and all of them, be healed, this, that way, be unto you according to your faith, and so forth. But here's the one healing where Jesus said nothing, did nothing, never took the credit, but gave it to the woman because he said, my daughter, your faith has done this. Now, that has implications for us. We're in the same boat, except in most cases, we're not looking for physical healing. Oh, yes, we have people who hurt. We have people who are sick, who suffer from cancer and other debilitating diseases. I know, I get the emails too about this person and that person and the trial they're undergoing. That is true, and I'm not taking anything away from that. But for the most part, it is spiritual. She tapped the fabric to plug in to God's physical healing power. We need to touch the tzitzit too, only this was spiritual, to access God's healing power, his spirit. That's what we go by, God's spirit. Without God's spirit, we have nothing. Upon baptism, he gives us his spirit. But now, how do we get more of it? You know, what do we do? Oh, God, I need your spirit. Please give me your spirit. I'll sit here folded arms and I'll sing kumbaya, and I know you will pour your spirit out upon me. You look down and you say, oh, this person's trying hard. Here's a tablespoon of the spirit. No, look at him. He's really working hard. Well, I'll give him a jar of the spirit. But this person, he's gone beyond all expectations. Give him a quart of the spirit. No, it doesn't work that way. Look at what Paul admonished Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 1. 2 Timothy. Let's go there and see. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 6. Yep. For this reason, I admonish you to stir up the gift of God that is in you by the laying on of my hands. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound-mindedness. But we have to work for it, just like that woman had to work for it. We've got to strive with all our might to achieve on the spiritual level what she achieved on the physical level. She did what she knew to do. She acted on all the knowledge that she had. What more could God ask in her condition? Nothing. That's why she was automatically healed. She plugged in and accessed the healing power. Now, why, for example, do we have to hit sa, struggle, strive with all our might in order to achieve the victory? Well, look what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. This was during the Sermon on the Mount. And it's 7 verses 13 and 14. Talking about broad is the gate and the way that leads to destruction. In verse 13. Many are those who enter into it. But verse 14. This is our job. This is our test. This is what we have to do to get to that tzitzit, to plug in to God's spiritual power. Okay, for narrow, in verse 14, narrow is the gate. Difficult is the way that leads to life. Few are those who find it. It's a tough road to hoe. That's why we have to have hitzah. Struggle, strive with your might, really hard. Without it, we're not going to defy gravity. Remember the heaving wings of a bird? The bird has to work to defy gravity. Well, we have to defy gravity. Only our gravity has 3 aspects to it. Oh, it pulls us down, all right. One, we might say, what did Paul say in Galatians? This present evil world. The pull of the flesh. All the world. All its customs. All the pressures that we face. That's one prong. Second prong, in Romans, the carnal mind, enmity against God. We've got to fight that. We've got to access the Spirit of God. He's just not going to pour it out on us for the sake of pouring it out on us. He's waiting to give it to us. He wants us to get it. But we'll see in a minute how I believe we really get it. And then Satan himself, the adversary. So we have to strive in order to defy the gravity. By the way, if any of you have ever heard that song, it is really a beautiful, powerful song, Defying Gravity. Well, we all have to defy the gravity, or else we'll never be in God's kingdom. And the only way that we're going to defy that gravity is through God's Spirit. So, what do we need to do? Well, we have 3 things that we do. 1, prayer. 2, Bible study. And 3, just good works. What's important about prayer? When we pray, we're talking to our Father. We're expressing ourselves to Him. He expresses Himself to us through His Word. But we talk to Him, and we explain anything and everything on our mind. And we praise Him. We give Him the glory. We ask Him for help. Now, as we do this, we draw closer to Him. He, in turn, draws closer to us. And the proximity between us narrows and narrows. He is Spirit. And as we pray harder and more fervently with feeling, more of God's Spirit comes to us. It's automatic. It's just like the woman. If I can just touch that border, I will have that power. When we call upon our Father, that Spirit comes to us because we are drawing closer to Him, closer to the fringe, closer to that spiritual fringe. And there's Bible study. Remember what Fred used to say? He probably still does, though I haven't heard him say it recently. But he has said it many times. Keep our noses in the Bible. Open that book and read it. Get your nose there. Because there's something about those words. They're Spirit-filled. And when we read them, and we keep on reading them over a period of time, the Spirit that's there just somehow comes off the page to us. And we obtain more of His Spirit. And the more we read, the more we study, the more we meditate. And in combination with asking God, I read this, Father, what does this mean? What should I be doing? The more that happens, the more we access the power of His Spirit, and it comes to us. He's not out there just dishing it out this way. We're doing it just the way the woman did it. And so when we pray and study, we're doing it by faith. So Jesus, in essence, is saying, you will receive the Spirit by faith, by doing what we're doing. So it's remarkable that way. So in all of this, now there are several other things I could say, but I think it's pretty much covered the ground enough for us today. So I do want to close by giving some praise and credit to this woman, because she set us a wonderful example of someone who understood the Messiah, who knew the power of that Messiah, and dedicated herself to serving Him and becoming closer to Him, to be part of the kingdom, the covenant, the covenantal promise of healing. She did. So here she was, a woman who knew that God's anointed, Jesus the Messiah, had divine healing in His wings. And those wings were the corners, the hem of His garment. Borders and hems, hems and borders. For us, spiritual. We have to access the spiritual aspect. She went for the physical because that's all she knew. And she was rewarded and healed. She acted on her belief, which was faith. So may we have the faith that she did. May we act on what we know, and may we believe. Because ultimately, the ultimately act of healing. The ultimate healing is going to be the resurrection. And so we must live by faith, knowing, believing that at some point in time, we don't know when, God hasn't told us. Oh, there are signposts in the scriptures where if we see certain things, we can tell that the time's drawing near, it's getting closer, but we don't know when. But we must keep on striving to touch the spiritual garment so that we may have his spirit to lead and guide us. And in that way, we follow through with Jesus' command in Matthew 6, verse 33. We don't need to turn there. We all know what it is. Seek ye first the kingdom. But it has to be done by faith. So let's honor this woman and let's follow her noble example.